On June the 7th, you'll be voting again, but this time not for your local council or for the House of Commons, but for someone to look after your interests in the European Assembly, the Common Markets Parliament.
260 million people live in the common market, more than either the United States or the Soviet Union. It's the world's largest producers of motor cars, the world's largest trader, and the third world's biggest customer.
So you think you know about Europe? Good evening and welcome to this special edition of So You Think You Know About Europe. For the next 50 minutes, Magnus Magnusson and I will be putting questions and also coming up with the answers to you at home and to our studio guests. You'll find a score sheet like this in the Radio Times, or you can keep a tally of your score on a piece of paper on the back of an old envelope, come to that.
The important thing is to join in and see how you fare against our two studio teams. We've called them the home team and the away team, and you'll see why when I introduce my team, the away team, three Britons who live and work elsewhere in Europe. First of all, we have James Hunt, the 1976 World Motor Racing Champion who lives in Spain now. Then we have Petula Clark, who's married to a Frenchman and lives in Switzerland, just beside Geneva. And finally, Frederick Forsyth, best-selling novelist living in County Wicklow in Ireland. He knows Europe backwards, just as James Hunt knows Europe forwards, and very fast indeed. That's Cliff Michelmore's line, I've just pinched it.
And my team, as he calls them, my home team, are Britons who reside and work in Britain. First of all, Henry Cooper, former European boxing champion and married to the most delightful Italian lady that I know. And next to Henry, we've got Clare Francis, who's had her feet on the ground long enough to marry a Frenchman and start a family. Welcome, Clare. Nice to have you back at home, as it were. And on the far side, we've got Sir David Hunt, former diplomat, who was the mastermind champion for 78. He's married to a Greek, and I only hope that you're going to be the Euro champion of 1979 for us.
So if you're ready with pencil and paper, stand by to test yourself against our two teams on 5 rounds of questions, first on the EEC and its institutions, then on holidays in Europe, working in the EEC, leisure in Europe, and love and marriage. The scoring is very simple. If one of our contestants here in the studio answers correctly, he or she will get 5 points. So if the whole team gets it right, they'll clock up 15 points for each correctly answered question. Now, if you get it right at home, therefore, you give yourself 15 points. This means that throughout the program, you'll be able to keep tally of how you're doing against the studio teams.
So much for the rules. Let's get on with the contest. We begin with a round of questions about the common market and its institutions. There are 9 members of the EEC, and we list 8 of them here. Question number 1 is, which country is missing? Which of the 9 countries is missing from this list? And you've only got 5 seconds in which to answer. Which one is missing? All right, question number 2. The common market's correct name is the European Community. True or false? The common market's correct name is the European Community. Is that true or is it false? Question 3. Which of these buildings is the home of the European Commission? Is it A, B, or C? It's all right, you can see them, Petula. Put your spectacles on. Question 4. What is the senior legislative body in the common market? Is it A, the European Court of Justice, B, the European Assembly, or C, the Council of Ministers? Is it A, B, or C? The senior legislative body. I wish they wouldn't call it legislative. Question 5. From June the 7th, the European Assembly will have responsibility and legislative power for all common market matters. Is that true, or is it false? Question 6. The European Assembly will meet in A, Brussels and Luxembourg, B, Luxembourg, C, Luxembourg and Strasbourg, or D, Strasbourg. Now, is it A, B, C, or D? Question 7. If a member country or individual citizen breaks the common market law, they go before an international court that meets in A, Strasbourg, B, The Hague, or C, Luxembourg. If a member country or individual citizen breaks the common market law, they go before an international court that meets in one of those places. Which is it? And now, with the answers to the first round of questions, here's Magnus.
Well, question 1 asked you to name the one EEC country that was missing from the list, and the answer is Denmark, which joined the EEC in 1973 with ERA and the United Kingdom. Question 2 offered the proper name for the common market as the European Community. True or false? The answer is false. The correct name for the common market is the European Economic Community, and it's one of 3 organizations making up the European Community. The other 2 are the European Coal and Steel Community and the European Atomic Energy Community. All 3 are closely linked and run by the same civil service in Brussels. So for question 2, the right answer is false. Question 3, it's this building that houses the European Commission, the civil service of the EEC. It's the Berlaymont building, and it's in Brussels. So for question 3, the correct answer is B. A, on the left there, is the Palace of Europe in Strasbourg, and C is the Kirchberg complex in Luxembourg. Question 4, the senior legislative body in the common market is the Council of Ministers. The Council of Ministers is housed in the Charlemagne building in Brussels, just a stone's throw from the EEC Commission building. So for question 4, the correct answer is C. Question 5, the European Assembly will have responsibility for future common market laws. True or false? The answer is false. The Assembly remains, by and large, a consultative assembly or sounding board, although it can propose legislation and can suggest amendments. It is possible, of course, in time that it'll demand more power, just as our own Parliament eventually ceased to rubber-stamp the decisions of the King and became instead the seat of ultimate power, but not at present. So the correct answer to question 5 is false. Question 6. The European Assembly will meet in Luxembourg and Strasbourg, and the Parliament Secretariat is based in Luxembourg. So the correct answer to question 6 is C, Luxembourg and Strasbourg. Question 7. The Supreme Court in Common Market Matters meets in Luxembourg and is called the European Court of Justice. The Hague is home to the International Court for disputes between countries from all over the world. Strasbourg is home to the Court of Human Rights. So the correct answer to question 7 is C, Luxembourg. Confused? Well, here's Cliff to tell you how it works, or to put it another way, who does what, with which, and to whom.
And where? There are 4 major EEC institutions. First, the European Commission in Brussels. It's the civil service of the EEC, but more importantly, the Commission makes proposals for new legislation. Its current president is from Britain, Roy Jenkins. All proposals for legislation are then submitted to the nearest thing we have to a common market cabinet, the Council of Ministers. There are 9 of them, 1 for each member country, but no country has a permanent minister. We all prefer to send along the appropriate minister to represent our interests. But the Council of Ministers has the final say on each proposal, and if all 9 ministers agree, then, sooner or later, that proposal will become law in every common market country. The Council of Ministers is obliged to consult the European Assembly. To date, the Assembly is a consultative body where different views may be aired, but without the power to legislate, though it can suggest amendments. Those amendments are returned to the Council of Ministers, and in effect, once the Council of Ministers has agreed on the law, that is it. If a member country or an individual citizen disobeys that law, they can be called to account before the 4th major EEC body, the European Court of Justice in Luxembourg. There are 9 judges, again 1 for each member country.
Well, thank you very much, Cliff. Blindingly clear now, so that's the end of round 1, the EEC and its institutions. If you answered all 7 questions correctly, your score sheet should look like this, with a maximum score at home of 105. Well, now let's just see how the away team did on that first round. James Hunt, how did you score?
I scored 3.
Out of the 7. Did you find it very hard?
I found it very hard, but I worked out with some of the A, Bs and Cs, you see, if you've just got 3 alternatives, you've got a 2-to-1 chance against it, so you can just have a stab. Unfortunately, I stabbed and missed.
Petula Clark.
I got 4.
That's not bad. Which ones did you find difficult?
Well, I thought the last one, 7, was tricky. Was that the 3?
All these international courts.
Yes, I knew it wasn't The Hague, but you know,
You took a 50-50 chance.
Mm-hmm. And I knew about Strasbourg for 6, but I didn't know it was Luxembourg and Strasbourg.
I see. And Frederick Forsyth.
I got 6.
Our champion in this round. Which one did you get wrong?
I confused the International Court and the European Court, so I said The Hague.
The court's a problem. How did your team do?
Well, I'll see how my team did. Sir David, how did you get on there? Let me turn to our mastermind first.
I got 7.
Well, that's all of them.
Well,
I'm not going to ask you if you found any of them difficult, because clearly you didn't. Clare, now, which ones did you get right? Come on, you got the one about, what, the building, right?
I got the European Assembly... wait a minute. Yes, I got the building right. That was just guesswork. It looked most appropriate.
But you knew about the responsibilities within the EEC.
Yes. I knew that they couldn't tell us what to do yet. It's only a matter of time, though, isn't it?
French husbands can, though. Let's come to Henry at the end here. How did you do, Henry?
well, I got them all wrong.
Are you going on holiday, Henry? Are you going on holiday, Henry?
I think right now, I think...
Good. Well, I think we may have something. We have got a total sum of 45, Magnus, to your 65. There's a little leeway to make up, I think.
And at home they could have got 105. Well, now, on now to round 2. For most of us, first-hand experience of Europe comes when we go there on holiday. But how much do we know about EEC regulations that might affect us there? Let's join a typical British family as they set off on their hollies.
Question 1. It's day 1 of our typical British family's holiday, and Mr. Smith has made all the preparation he thinks are necessary. Oh, well, he's forgotten his passport, and although a lot's been done to abolish frontier formalities, you still need a full hardcover passport. True or false? You have 5 seconds to answer. The answer is false. The only document he needs is the simple British visitor's passport. It costs £5.50, and you get it from any post office, and it's valid for a year. The British visitor's passport was introduced in 1961 because we don't have identity cards. But citizens of those common market countries which do have identity cards may use them to travel within the community, and that means that they can come to Britain with identity cards if they wish. Question 2. Mr. Smith has also armed himself with an international driving permit and green card for insurance because legally he's required to have these documents. True or false? The answer is false. If you're over 18 years of age and hold a valid British driving licence, not a provisional one, you may drive in any common market country. The only minor exception to that is in Italy, where your British driving licence has to be accompanied by an official Italian translation. As for the green card, this is no longer legally required in common market countries, although again, Italy is the slight exception. There, they prefer tourists to be able to produce the green card, even though legally you need not. So it may be a practical advantage to have an international driving permit and a green card with you. They could save a great deal of inconvenience in the case of an accident. Incidentally, you must take your registration document and your car must have a GB sticker. Question 3. Mr. Smith makes sure that his wife and children all belt up. A wise thing to do, but not a requirement throughout the EEC. True or false? The answer is true. Like Britain, the Irish Republic has made the fitting of seatbelts compulsory, but not the wearing of them. And in Italy, there's no requirement to have the belts fitted in a car, much less to wear them. Though, if you've ever travelled down the autostradas or seen how the Neapolitans drive in the rush hour, then you'll want to belt up for safety's sake. All other EEC countries, however, do require you to belt up at all times. Incidentally, Britain and the Irish Republic are the only two common market countries which do not require motorists to display a reflecting triangle in the road to give other drivers advanced warning of a breakdown or obstruction. A lot of holiday motorists are caught out on this. The use of a warning triangle is compulsory in all other common market countries, although in France you may use your hazard warning lights as an alternative, providing they're visible for 100 metres. Question 4. One evening, our poor Smith family eat something that clearly does not agree with their delicate British stomachs. Mr. Smith is shocked when he discovers that he has to fork out for medical treatment. He thought that now we were in the EEC, everything was free under reciprocal arrangements. True or false? The answer is false. In France, for instance, you have to pay for medical or dental treatment and for medicines, and then obtain a refund from the local French sickness insurance office. You'll get back about 75% of the doctor's or dentist's fee, and about 70% of the cost of medicines. And if you're unfortunate enough to land up in hospital, the local insurance office again will pay approximately 80% of the expenses. To cover yourself under the reciprocal health rules, you have to complete a form, CM1, at your local social security office here in Britain, and you get in exchange Form E111. E111 is the form you take with you to show doctors and dentists, chemists or hospitals when you're abroad. Generally speaking, you pay for treatment and medicines and get the money reimbursed, though the system varies from country to country. The details are given, by the way, in a Department of Health leaflet, SA 28, Medical Treatment for Visitors to Other EEC Countries. So for question 4, the answer is false. Although there are reciprocal agreements, you still have to pay a percentage of the costs. Question 5. If he wanted the ultimate away-from-it-all holiday, just how far could he go from London and stay within the EEC? Would it be A, 1,200 miles, B, 2,500 miles, C, 4,000 miles, D, 6,000 miles? The answer is D. Mr. Smith could drive and paddle 6,000 miles to the island of Reunion in the Indian Ocean. Although it's so far away, it's a fully fledged department of France. and therefore subject to all the normal EEC regulations. So for question 5, the answer is D, 6,000 miles. Question 6. On their way back, Mr. Smith buys 4 litres of his favourite wine in a supermarket. Mrs. Smith buys 2 litres of her favourite wine at a duty-free shop. They are both within their allowances. True or false? The answer is true. The allowance is 4 litres per person on goods obtained duty and tax paid, but the allowance is only 2 litres per person if they are bought duty-free, and you can't mix up the 2 categories to get yourself a better deal. The same rules apply to the purchase of cigarettes and perfume, toilet water and other goods. If you buy from ordinary shops and supermarkets within the EEC, in other words, duty and tax paid, you may bring home 300 cigarettes or 75 cigars, 75 grams of perfume and £120 worth of other goods. If you bought them duty and tax free, then the allowances drop to 200 cigarettes or 50 cigars, 50 grams of perfume and only £28 worth of other goods. And these allowances apply to citizens of other EEC countries returning home. So the correct answer to question 6 is true.
And the ins and outs of holiday travel were investigated for us by Cliff's colleague on the holiday programme, John Carter, to whom thanks.
And I'm going to have a word with him about that reunion island question, I tell you.
I reckon that's fooled everyone, I must say.
Got me.
So that was round 2 on holidays, and if you got all 6 answers right, your score sheet should look like this, the maximum score at home being 90.
Now let me turn to my team. Sir David, how did you do?
I got 5 out of 6, but I'm bound to say my imagination stopped at Brindisi, and I didn't think of Réunion.
No, I don't think many would. Clare, I saw you blinking when those mileages were going up and getting further and further away.
Well, I got to southern Italy and then I ran out. I mean, I didn't believe there was anywhere beyond there. So I got that one wrong, but I got the rest right, which makes up for my last round.
That was very clever of you. Henry, which of them did you get right? Let me put it...
You must know something. You must have heard something there. I got the first one right and number 4 right.
That was the passport one.
The passport one and the health arrangements, I got that right.
Have you had to pay for health arrangements when you've been to Italy?
No, not really, no.
You just get it on the family when you go there,
I just look dumb like this all the time.
I'm very pleased to be able to tell you that our team got 12 that time. That's 60 points. Well done, you.
As you
Magnus.
It's Henry that does damage to other people's health when he's abroad, rather. What about my away team? James Hunt, how did you get on?
Well, I blew up on the driving one for a start, which was a bit stupid of me.
The driving permit?
I didn't listen to the question properly, or I was stupid because I did actually know that you didn't need an international permit. I just confused that with a licence.
A nice irony about that, I must say. And,
otherwise, I got 4.
You got 4 out of 6, Petula?
Yes, I got 4 out of 6 too.
Were you baffled by that furthest place in the EEC?
Well, yes, of course. I thought that was almost, well, it's not exactly cheating, but
a trick
sort of
question.
close. That because it's part of, it's ours.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
We'd have a few letters and mastermind about that one, I must say.
Freddie, a few letters here about it.
Freddie, how did you
4.
get on? You got 4. Which you got
I
the
believed for some reason that France still wanted you to have a green card, and although I didn't stop at Brindisi, I stopped at Guadeloupe and Martinique. Didn't matter because I still calculated the distance wrong anyway.
I must say, after all the research you did in getting the jackal around Europe, I thought you'd get that one right. Anyway, that means that at the end of the second round, if we look at the scoreboard, we'll see that the away team there scored 60, the home team scored 60. So the cumulative score after 2 rounds is the home team has 105, the away team has 125. The home maximum, by the way, by this time is 195. Cliff.
And now a round of questions about living and working in the common market, which many more of us are doing. Question number 1. Can a citizen of the United Kingdom now move house and home and take up a job anywhere he or she pleases in the EEC? Answer yes or no. Can you move house, home, take a job anywhere you please now within the EEC? Yes or no? Question 2. if you get a job in the EEC, will the host country, the country to which you go, recognise the national insurance payments that you've made in the United Kingdom? Answer again, yes or no. Will they recognise your national insurance payments? Question 3. Can you become a voting member of a European trade union? Can you become a voting member of a European trade union, yes or no? Question 4. Assuming you're leaving Britain because you can't find work here, that is, that you're unemployed, which country of the EEC, apart from tiny Luxembourg, has the smallest percentage of its workforce unemployed? Which of the EEC countries has the smallest unemployment percentage? 5 seconds. Question 5. Ownership of a car, a fridge and a washing machine often provides a very useful pointer to the standard of living in a country. Now, which of the EEC countries has the highest percentage of these items? You've only got 9 to choose from. Choice made. Question 6. Which country takes the least income tax and national insurance out of your pay packet? You have 5 seconds. Which country takes the least income tax and national insurance out of your pay packet? Question 7. If you're leaving Britain to get away from the strikes, you'll want to know the answer to this one. Which EEC country has the fewest strikes? Which EEC country has the fewest strikes? And now here's Magnus with all the answers.
Well, the answer to question 1 on the right to work anywhere in the EEC is yes. But it's a qualified yes. Citizens of one member country can now go and work in another member country, and there is no longer any need for a work permit. However, while doctors can practice in any part of the EEC, teachers, lawyers, and architects have far less freedom of movement. But in most instances, as our away team I'm sure all know, you're free to live and work where you please within the EEC. So yes to question 1. Will your British national insurance payments be recognised elsewhere in the EEC? That was question 2, and the answer is yes. All member states now recognise each other's national insurance contributions, and this obviously makes movement of labour much easier. So yes to question 2. Question 3 was about trade union rights. In the past, a migrant worker didn't have the same rights. His wife and children might not even have been allowed to accompany him. But now you can join a union, vote in a union, and even stand for office in a union anywhere in the EEC. So yes to question 3. Question 4 asked which country, apart from Luxembourg, was the best employment by? That's to say, which country has the smallest percentage of its workforce unemployed? The answer, surprisingly enough, is Italy, with Germany a close second. Britain is next to Clare at the bottom of the list. But before you polish up your Italian or German, remember that unemployment, like inflation, is rampant throughout Europe. If you put Italy for question 4, give yourself at home 15 points. Question 5 asked which country had the highest percentage ownership of a car, a fridge, and a washing machine, common consumer items when measuring the standard of living in a country. And the answer is Germany, where they have a far higher number of cars, fridges, washing machines, and almost twice as many freezers and dishwashers as in Britain, although Britain does lead in telephone and TV set ownership. So for question 5, the answer was Germany. Question 6 asked which country takes the least income tax and national insurance from your pay packet, and the answer is France. A married man with 2 children living and working in France is left with 83% in his pay packet after government deductions. The Danes and the Irish carry the highest tax burden, then us, then Holland, Belgium and Italy, and France at the bottom. This may explain why the average Parisian has to work for only 13 minutes to buy a bottle of whiskey, while we in Scotland have to work a further 45 minutes, or a scandalous 58 minutes in all. So, for question 6, the correct answer is France. Now, the last question in this section was about strikes. If you're thinking of getting away from them all, which country in the EEC is the best buy? Well, contrary to what you might think, the United Kingdom is not bottom of the list. In 1976, Italy lost 192 days' work for every 1,000 workers, and they've been bottom of the table since 1960. No, the best buy country for the fewest strikes is Holland, with only 4 days lost per 1,000 workers. Then Germany with 26 per 1,000 workers, then Denmark with 111, and as you can see, the United Kingdom has a relatively good record compared with some others. So score 15 points if you wrote Holland for the best buy for industrial peace. And at the end of that round 3, your score sheet at home should look like this, with a possible maximum total of 105.
As we've seen so far, different EEC countries have different things in their favour, so when deciding to up anchor and work in Europe, there are lots of pros and cons. One man who's been closely connected with labour relations in both this country and the EEC is Jack Peel, former member of the TUC, but now Director of Industrial Relations at the EEC. I think a number of people are going to be surprised by the strike figures we've just given, particularly the strike figures of Holland. But isn't there a difference between official strike figures and unofficial figures? How do we rate there?
Well, I think that's true, and the problem about Britain is that most of the strikes are unofficial, at least when they begin, or they're often made official later. And this is the difficulty about Britain, that most of the strikes, because they're unofficial, are unpredictable, and they wreak havoc with our standing and confidence abroad. Moreover, many of these unofficial strikes in Britain are in the key worker sectors and often put thousands or 100,000 or more workers out of work as a consequence of those strikes. That's the real damage that strikes wreak in Britain. It's not the figures, it's the effect of the strike that's the problem.
If there were a league table of unofficial strikes, how would we do then?
Oh, I think we would top that all right.
Or bottom it, you mean? Yeah?
Or bottom it, yes, as the case may be.
Do they have the same kind of picketing problems on the continent that we have here?
No, picketing doesn't seem to be an issue on the continent. Curiously enough, Britain and Ireland are the only two countries in the 9 where the right to picket peacefully is, strictly speaking, enshrined in the law. Picketing, of course, does take place on the continent, but it's allowed because it's peaceful and only affects the people involved. Secondary picketing is unknown on the continent.
What about closed shops?
There are no closed shops. There are, well, perhaps just a trace of a closed shop in Denmark, in Holland, but broadly speaking, the closed shop is not known on the continent. This is because unions on the continent have won their freedoms through the law. They've won the right to organise, the freedom to associate, which carries, of course, the right not to associate. But singularly, the closed shops in Britain don't produce what they should produce, which is a high rate of membership and better wages and conditions. At least two countries, Denmark and Belgium, have a higher trade union density than Britain without the closed shop. And obviously, wages and conditions are better than in Britain.
One other thing that they have won for their members, the union leadership, are fringe benefits, and these are quite considerable. I mean, we talk about how much money they earn, but the fringe benefits are enormous on the continent.
Well, that's true, and the bargaining spectrum on the continent is much wider. Let's take one industry, textiles, which I know well. A British textile worker gets 3 weeks annual holiday with 3 weeks pay. A Belgian textile worker gets 4 weeks, 2 days annual holiday with 8 weeks, 4 days pay, longer holidays and double pay for those holidays. This is quite a marked difference and explains why industrial relations on the continent tend to be less volatile than in Britain.
But what about minimum wages? They also negotiated some of those on the continent.
That's true. At least 5 countries, if I can remember them, Denmark, Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg and France, deal with
75 points you got for that, yeah.
Fine, yes, I've been listening to the others. In fact, they deal with low pay by having a national minimum wage. It costs money, but it avoids these devastating wrangles, the like of which we've seen in Britain last winter.
Do you think the EEC will help us in union matters in future?
I think so. They're certainly studying this question of a national minimum wage, and I feel quite strongly about it.
Jack, thank you very much indeed. Good of you to come over.
Now let me just give you the scores for round 3. I must say I thought this one, working in the EEC, my away team would romp ahead, but in fact there's been a dramatic change in fortune because the home team scored 75 points, mainly because Clare Francis got all 7 correct, and the away team only scored 50 points, even though they are working in Europe in the EEC, and so now the overall score is that the home team have just gone ahead with 180 to the away team's 175. Well, 2 more rounds to go, and in round 4 we look at leisure in the common market. If you like, how the other half unwinds. Not surprisingly, watching television is a popular leisure activity throughout Europe, but the price you pay varies from country to country. So, question 1 is this. In which EEC country would you pay the most for your television viewing?
All done. The most expensive television viewing is in Denmark, where a colour licence would cost the average person 12 hours and 44 minutes of his labour, with the United Kingdom right at the very bottom. Also, Holland, France, Italy and Germany charge extra for a radio licence. So the answer to question number 1 is unmistakably Denmark. Magnus.
Now, if you're on holiday or working in the EEC, you won't necessarily be missing your favourite BBC programmes. If you're in Cologne, for instance, you could switch on your television and see, unlikely, this.
Hallo, Lord Melbury! Betrüger! Ich meine nicht Sie, Verzeihung, ich meine ihn. Bitte machen Sie sich nichts draus. Entschuldigen Sie mich bitte noch einen Moment. Also.
Basil! Basil, Sir Richard und Frau gehen weg. Die Morris gehen weg.
Kommen Sie.
Wo wollen Sie hin? Wo wollen Sie hin?
Wir gehen wieder.
Tun Sie es nicht, bitte nicht. Es gefällt Ihnen sicher.
In einem solchen Haus bin ich mein Lebtag noch nicht gewesen.
Ihr Snobs! Ihr dämlichen, eingebildeten, aufgeblasenen, schwachsinnigen, abgewrackten Misthaufen!
Well, I'm after Cologne. It's even more hilarious than German. Well, unlike Mr. Faulty, the average Englishman traditionally unwinds over a pint of beer in the pub. So question 2 is, which EEC country has the highest beer consumption per head?
Write something down quickly. Well, members of the northern social clubs and the rugby clubs all over the country, including Wales, may be very surprised to hear that the British do not top the league. The Germans are the great beer drinkers of Europe, with an average of 265 pints per head per year, and the United Kingdom in 5th place with 209. In wine drinking, although more and more of us seem to be having the odd glass, we only drink, on average, 9 pints per head per year, against France's 178 and Italy's 175. So score 15 points if you put Germany to the top of the beer drinking league.
So question 3. After the beer, what about a visit to a football match? In which EEC country would you have to pay the most for a ticket to a football match?
Write something down. And the answer is Italy. The average Italian must put in 3 hours and 39 minutes work to pay for his ticket. The German spectator only has to work 1 hour and 54 minutes, and the average Briton works 1 hour and 21 minutes to pay for his ticket, except at cup final time when he has to work 5 years overtime. In Luxembourg, the average worker has to put in only 21 minutes of toil. Mind you, we can't vouch for the quality of Luxembourg's soccer, or can we?
And question 4, it's your birthday, and you decide on a meal for 4 in a smart restaurant, including 2 aperitifs each, a 3-course meal, 2 bottles of good wine, and coffee to follow. Which country would cause you most to regret having invited your in-laws along as well? In which EEC country is a night on the town the most expensive?
We've got quick pencils in the studio. Britain looks like the best buy because in London the average cost of a meal for 4 with wine and aperitifs is about £50. But although the equivalent meal in Brussels would cost you £110, you must remember that to a Belgian that £110 might not be such a shock. In fact, the average Belgian would have to work 5 hours and 12 minutes at his desk or workbench to pay for that £110 meal. The average Briton would have to work 6 3/4 hours to pay for his £50 meal. But the poor Italian worker would have to slave away for 7.5 hours to pay for a meal that costs £60 in British terms. So the answer is a night on the town is most expensive to the people of Italy, which I hope Henry Cooper got right. Give yourself 15 points if you wrote Italy. He shakes his head no. Magnus.
Still, a lot of people in Europe do think Britain is the best buy, particularly for holidays. So question 5. Which of our EEC partners sends us the greatest number of tourists?
The latest available figures for 1978, that is, show that 1,411,000 German people visited Britain, 1,241,000 French, 956,000 Dutch, 688,000 Belgians and Luxembourgers, and 316,000 Italians. And where do we put them all? So Germany is the correct answer to question 5. Incidentally, Britain's favourite EEC tourist centre is France, with Era as second choice. The Britain's European Mecca is Spain, and Spain has already applied for membership of the EEC. You will be pleased to know, James.
So if you answered all the 5 questions correctly in that 4th round, your score sheet at home should look like this, with a maximum possible total of 75 for round 4.
I report a few furrowed brows here in the studio. So, David, how did you do?
Well, it's all downhill like a cow's tail, as Petronius said. I only got 2 this time, 40%. It's not much of a
Which 2 did you get right?
I got the first 2, the most expensive TV license and the highest beer consumption. I knew that one.
Yeah. How did you do, Claire?
Well, after my last round, I had to come down after
couldn't
that.
go
Well,
up.
I got 2 out of 5, and I got the beer, and I got the tourists, because I know it's so expensive in Germany, it has to be cheap to them here. So I thought it would be very sensible if they all came here.
I'm very pleased that there's about 9 feet between myself and dear Henry, because you were shaking your head about the Italian connection.
Yeah, well, the old country's most expensive dining out. I couldn't see that at all. No, I put France down. I've paid much more money than when I've dined in France and French.
What were the ones you got right, Henry?
Well, I got the highest beer consumption and the country which sends most tourists to Britain, Germany again.
Oh, he did very well. Well, my lot then got 30 points. I wonder if it's enough to keep us in the lead.
So, away team, James Hunt, how did you do?
I got 3 this time.
Which 2 did you get wrong then?
I got the 2 with hours-related costs, workers' hours.
What, the football tickets?
The football tickets and the dining out. Because
Does it suggest that you
put
don't
myself
go
out of the running by not guessing, by just thinking about prices from my own travelling rather than relating it to working hours. So, but I'm not saying they would have got them right anyway, had I known that.
I think the most furrowed brow in the studio just now, metaphorically speaking, is Petula Clark. How did you get on?
I mean, really, 0, a big, big 0.
Nothing right at all? Everything went wrong?
And I knew, well, I felt I knew about the beer drinking thing, but it seemed to be too obvious. Yeah.
Let me turn to Freddie Forsyth. How did you get on?
Not well, only 2 right. I thought Belgians drank more beer than Germans. And what else did I think? I thought Denmark was rather pricey to dine out. But see, I didn't realise you were adjusting it to work away.
Right.
I thought you were talking about sums of money.
You see, Magnus, there is a problem. For instance, when having done those 2 questions, 3 and 4, right, which you related to working hours and things, I was worried by answering question 5. I knew Germany send the highest gross number of tourists because, apart from their prices, they're also the highest population, right? And so there's more of them to come. I thought then that you would make the answer, therefore, related per capita, right?
Marvellously specious logic I've ever had. I congratulate you for the
It could have been
attempt.
per
Yes, I do,
capita, and
James.
you would have done that, and that would have fooled it, because it may not be the highest number of tourists per
I must say,
population.
what also interests me is that Freddie Forsyth thought that Ireland, where he lives, had the most expensive TV licenses.
I've never watched television in Europe anyway.
Anyway,
and,
please,
faintest idea. Faintest idea.
And now for our last round. They say that love makes the world go round and round and round, and round 5 is about how Europe copes with love and marriage. So question number 1 asks, which EEC country is the marrying kind? That is to say, which EEC country has the highest marriage rate, that is, marriages per 1,000 a year? You've got 5 seconds to answer.
And the answer is the United Kingdom, with 7.2 marriages for every 1,000 people. The country where marriage appears to be the least popular is Germany, with only 5.9 marriages per 1,000 people. So if your heart beat faster for Britain, give yourself at home 15 points.
Question 2. You're a bachelor at large in Europe, and you fall madly in love with a 15-year-old Belgian girl. However, her parents are implacably opposed to that match. In that case, how long would you have to wait before you could marry your Belgian Juliet? Would it be A, 1 year when she'd be 16, B, 3 years when she'd be 18, C, 6 years when she'd be 21, or D, 10 years when she'd be 25? Make up your minds now. Is it A, B, C, or D? 5 seconds.
A big decision for 5 seconds, all finished. And the answer is a desolate D. Without her parents' permission, our Belgian Juliet would have to wait until her 25th birthday before she could marry her British Romeo. She'd have to wait until she was 21 before she could even appeal to a court against her parents. However, if her parents were agreeable to the match, they could marry straight away when she was still 15. The youngest marrying age in the EEC without parental consent is in Scotland and Éire, where you can marry against your parents' wishes at the age of 16. So 15 points if you wrote D to that question.
Question 3. Not all marriages live happily ever after. In fact, the divorce rate throughout Europe is growing. But which EEC country has the highest divorce rate? The highest divorce rate. That's question 3. Which EEC country has the highest divorce rate?
And with 5 seconds up, the answer is Denmark, with 2.6 divorces per 1,000. However, the United Kingdom is a pretty close second at 2.3. So, although more of us get married than our European partners, we don't seem to regard it as quite such a binding contract as in some other countries. So, 15 points for you at home if you put Denmark top of the divorce league. Incidentally, in Germany, if you commit adultery and your new love is named as co-respondent in your divorce action, the law forbids you to marry that person. So in Germany, they really have to sound as if they mean it when they say, we're just good friends.
They have to be. For those who do fall in love and those who do marry, there is always the prospect of the patter of tiny feet. So question number 4 is, which EEC country has the highest birth rate? You have 5 seconds, if you see what I mean.
Chuckle from Petula, and the answer is Éire, with 22 births for every 1,000 people. Denmark, by the way, has the highest illegitimacy rate in the EEC. 217 babies in every 1,000 are illegitimate. In the UK, it's 90 babies per 1,000, whereas in Holland, only 24 babies in 1,000 are illegitimate. So 15 points if you wrote Éire, like Petula.
Finally, question 5. There is only one EEC country, and only one, that really means till death us do part. Because it's the only EEC country where you cannot get a divorce, name the country. Name the one country where you cannot get a divorce. A lot of muttering going on here, I tell you. 5 seconds is up.
5 seconds is up.